All right, well, I guess we'll get started. I'm sure we'll have some stragglers joining us eventually. So this is the fourth and final of the four-part UPTUT roundtable with several guest judges that have been kind enough to help us out with this. Tonight we have Roy Ames, and let me make sure I am recording. Yep, I'm recording. So just real quick, some basic housekeeping. Give yourself a name. It looks like everybody has a name on here, so we won't really go over that. You can use the chat to ask questions. You can raise your hand if discussion's kind of in depth. If you want to raise your hand to speak, just so that we don't miss you, that's a good way to let us know as well. But either raising your hand or chat, both good. And then please keep yourself on mute when not speaking in order to minimize background noise. So just your standard Zoom housekeeping. So for this four-part series, and we've recorded every one of them. And Brayton, am I right in saying that you are putting together a video of each of them?
Yes, I am. It's a time consuming to edit out kind of all the tangents and the chit chat to make it just kind of the nuts and bolts, but that's what I'm working on.
Okay, so eventually, yes, this will be available. So if you missed other parts of it, you will be able to access that probably on our YouTube channel. And so when that's ready, we'll put a link in the newsletter and let everybody know. And probably put it on Facebook as well, since we do a lot there. So basically in part one, we just did an introduction and a breakdown of all the test areas, just a general overall with Andy Doak, and talked about different training resources, what order Andy preferred to train in and why, and just some discussions of all the different areas of the test, really. So just a broad overall. And then we kind of got into the nuts and bolts. We had Larry Stone come in and do duck search for us in November. And then Herb Christian came in and did fieldwork and steadiness for us in January. And tonight we have Roy Ames for healing and steady at the blind, as well as, just kind of a final wrap up of his take on the test and answer any questions you might have, because it's really interesting to get different judges' perspective from everybody, and to see how different people do things differently. And so it's always really fun to get that insight. So, all right. So Roy, I'm going to allow you to introduce yourself and kind of give us your credentials, and just take it away, just so you are aware. Basically what we've got is I've got kind of a screenshot of all the different stuff from the aims and rules. So if you want to just kind of let me know how you want to talk about things, we can talk about the scorecard and stuff like that. So I'll let you take it away and take us on a journey of your utility test.
Okay, thank you, Lisha. Again, my name is Roy Ames. I'm a senior judge at NAVHDA. I don't know how long I've been actually a judge. I don't remember my date, but I've judged almost 1,500 dogs. So I've been doing this a while. I really enjoy the utility test, and it's probably the truest measure of a hunting dog in the United States that you can do. So anybody that tackles it, when you get done, regardless of whatever score, or even if you don't prize, you're going to have one heck of a hunting dog when you get done. So I guess we'll just start in. If you wanted me to just start in with like the healing portion of it and work right through the steadiness and long retrieve, and then we'll finish up with some questions at the end. Is that the way you want to run it?
Yeah, if you want to, let's see, what have we got here? This is the field and water and field. Trying to see. Do you want to take us through the scorecard, or just kind of as a kind of a I'm trying to see I got a eye issue right now. So yeah, there's walking at heel. So you could, I don't know, this is just something to have up visible while you kind of walk us through those portions of the test. But yeah, please just take it away. And
Sure. What I'm gonna do here is, I'm also a clinic leader. So I'm gonna pull up my clinic leader paperwork that'll help me work through to make sure I hit the high spots that need to be addressed as soon as I find it.
fantastic.
So basically, you know, whenever you're training for utility, I tell people utility training starts pretty much as soon as you get the pup, if anything, I mean, or basically shortly after your natural ability. The healing portion of it is you should be taking that young dog and introducing it to healing at a fairly young age, and it should be healing most places that you go. It's just good etiquette that you'll be able to do that. You'll be able to walk around, talk to people, see things, and that dog won't be yanking your place all over. Now, obviously, it is, you know, you have to think about how old that puppy is, and you're not going to expect a 4 or 5 month old pup to be handling itself like a, you know, finished utility dog when it comes to healing. But you put that groundwork in now, and you're not having to basically put a lot of pressure on the dog when you don't need to. And I'm still looking for, it's in one of my emails and just trying to find. So healing course now, you know, it's when you start out, when you're teaching healing, one of the things is that dog is when a dog heals, the dog should heal with his shoulder, even with your hip, in that little zone, given 10, 12 inches forward to back, whatever. But and the dog should be paying attention and doesn't have to be staring at you, but should be looking at you out of the corner eye so that he can acknowledge your movements. A dog that's healing his hip to your hip is not healing. That's leading. Okay. That will get you hit in the chest. You will get marked down for your score because that isn't healing. He's actually taking you to the blind as opposed to you taking him it to the blind. One of the things that people don't take into consideration when they're healing is they always think it's all about movement. Healing is also just having the dog able to stand still while you're standing still. And you can have that when you come up to somebody and you're going to carry on a conversation with them. That dog shouldn't be flipping and flopping all over the place. That dog should stand quietly at your side. Even if it sits, that's fine. But the dog should be standing at your side, facing the direction that you go. The reason I say that is when a portion of the test, when you come up to healing, is the judge is going to come up to you and give you your instructions. If you have to get your dog under control and you can't listen to the instructions, or when he's done giving you your instructions, you have to get your dog under control and get him in the right direction, you're already behind the 8 ball. So I would encourage people to practice healing away from the water and such, and think of it as stop, you know, heal for a while, come up to somebody, stop, talk to them, and have your dog behave as it should, standing still next to you, waiting for you to cue it when it gets moving again. Make sense? All right. As you know, the big change this year is there is no healing gates. So that being said, healing is still judged the same way. It's still from the first command to all the way down to the blind. When you're walking with your dog, it's supposed to be a loose leash. And I will tell you that what you want is you want a little bit of a loop in that leash. As you're walking along, that ground is going to go up and down, and it's got a little bit of roll to it. That dog's going to naturally move. You're naturally going to move up and down. By putting that little bit of loop in there, it doesn't cause a tight glide. You know, you got that nice piece that is kind of a shock absorber as you walk along. That can go a long ways in not looking like you're guiding the dog. If he steps down and all of a sudden that lead gets tight and pops, some situations that might be considered a command. Remember, a command is anything that you do to elicit a response from your dog. Anything. That means stomping your feet. That means quickening your pace. That means bumping it with your knee just as much as tugging on the leash or, saying heel with a command. So keep that in consideration. When you start out, anything that you do will be used in the judgment of your dog in that portion. It may be slight, it may be minor, and it may not, overall impact your score, but it still will be noted and it still will be used in consideration.
Roy,
Mm-hmm.
is there a difference in the way they look at heel with UPT versus UT, or is it the same for both tests?
It's judged the same for both tests.
Okay.
It's a basic obedience, and there is no UPT heel. It's shorter, obviously, and it used to be without the gates. Now they're both with the gates or without gates. Just so you know how pretty much it's going to be used. Most places that I've talked to will be painting a line on the ground. There'll be a slight bend. The UT, it used to be that you would want to set it up parallel to the water if possible, so that the dog would have a natural inclination to want to go to the water. Whereas UPT, a lot of times were set up to where it was like a head on. That's not so much the case anymore. I've seen that, because of where you're having the tests, that isn't always a possibility, but that's something that I've seen done in the past. But you should be, when you're practicing, you should be heeling. One of the best things is if you could be heeling across, like a barrier your dog can't see, and then you come out onto a view of a nice big open water that would make that dog want to turn. That's a great training situation where you can actually make, with you're not in the test, you can make a quick correction in training and get them over that so that they understand that that's just not acceptable.
Okay. Susan, you had a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering about, sorry, I'm gonna lower my hand. Wondering about those that train touch healing. You were saying if you use your knee and nudge the dog, that can be considered a command. If you have taught your dog touch healing, so they're touching you the whole time, how is that viewed?
Well, I would ask, if I was the judging and that's the situation, I would respond to, is I would actually tell my judge, whoever's handling me, that exact. How that'll be determined is how, when they look at it, if it's a dog that's just glued on and it's touching and you can see where that dog is moving with you, that's one thing. If I see it and to the point where the dog's going and veering off course and I watch you direct it with your knee, yeah, I'm going to take that as a command possibly. So without seeing how you do it or whatever, that would probably be my advice. Anytime that you have something that would you consider out of the norm or that you would be worried about, it doesn't hurt to say something to the judge. I don't know how it will be judged because I'm not there and I'm not the judge in charge, but it would be to your advantage to bring that out in the open. Answer the question, kind of?
Yeah, thanks. I don't actually do it, but I've seen others that do it, and I just wondered what your take was on it. Thank you.
I've seen the latest one I've seen more of, and I'm okay with, is actually where they put the leash across the back of the dog on the opposite side of where they are, and the dog learns to feel that leash. To me, that's actually a dog paying attention to the command or to the job at hand, and I'm okay with that. So it's something that I'd love to give you 1 + 1 = 2, but that doesn't how dogs work, and that doesn't how that situation is out there. We got to read exactly what we see as a judge, talk to the other judges, and determine if it was something that was a correction or cooperation. Put it that way. How's that?
Sounded good to me.
Okay. All right. So I'm just going to get through here to my, okay. So I'm going to read you out of basically kind of what we have in healing on the clinic leader, on the clinic when we teach it.
Okay.
Healing, no healing stakes will be used. Natural obstacles may be used. If necessary, a single line to designate the course may be painted on the ground. No other markers are permitted. This is a test of practical obedience. It is useful when hunting and in situations not related to hunting. It must be remembered that many one-dog families that the versatile hunting dog is also a household companion. Any good hunting dog should be able to follow its master at heel, on or off lead. The highest score should be given to a dog and handler that can accomplish this task with minimal or no commands. See that? Minimal. Does not mean that you have to give no commands, but it should be appropriate commands. Excessive pulling on the lead, foot stomping, or an abnormal pace may be penalized depending on its frequency and severity. The intent of this test is not to be judged as an elimination test. The dog that leads the handler down the path is not at heel, no matter what the slack in the lead may be. Excessive pulling of the lead by a dog or handler will lower a score. A point deduction for each tightening of the lead is not what this says. The judges must decide the degree of the infraction. Okay. Pretty much how we teach it. Any questions? So,
Seeing any?
all right. So when I teach healing, like obviously I put it in because I hate being yanked around by dogs, and my shoulders are pretty sore after all the years. So I put it on them pretty fairly soon. And I also find when they're younger, it's much easier to kind of get them to do what I want to do without them ripping my shoulders out of the socket. So it's also a great time because they are small and they end up taking to training a lot more. As they get a little older, I try to increase the amount of distraction. I don't go crazy. I mean, I'm not trying to, there's nothing wrong at a healing day or a training day to heal your dog around within reason. 4 to 5, 2 to 3 hours of healing is a bit much. If you can break it up into like a couple 15-minute sessions, maybe 3-4 sessions during the course of the day, that's great, and then as you get to the point where you're going to find out later, and you say you get lucky and you get to do well and you progress the invitational, that's when you really got to start kind of really thinking about that off lead healing. Now I use off lead healing pretty young. I started out as soon as they're good at healing, I institute off lead healing. That's because when I go between covers, when I'm a grouse hunting and such, I don't want to have to put them on a lead all the time. I just want to kind of walk down the trail and tell them heal and walk down the trail as needed. So I put it in relatively young too. It's better to train the entire time than it is to try to shove it all in their brain 2 months before the actual test. I've added, you get certain dogs that sometimes maybe they surge towards the water too much. What I do a lot of times is I'll have somebody stand there and throw a duck across the path that they're walking. Maybe 2 or 3 people. It'll have a tendency to slow them down because they're going to be waiting for that duck to be thrown around because maybe they get a possible retrieve out of it. But in general, it'll slow them down from kind of, surging towards the water when they see it. So little things, but like I said, the more proofing that you can do now before, the better it off it is. Any other questions as far as healing?
Yeah, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to the markings, did they do away with that with the stakes and stuff? I've seen it done here in the Midwest where they actually weave down through a course of stakes.
Yeah, there is no stakes anymore.
I've also seen it done at another location where they walked straight down the course and didn't do any weaving. Have they eliminated that now? Do you just walk on heel as you stated?
They will give you a course, whether that will be a painted line on the ground or say the edge of a gravel road they'll want you to go, but there's no stakes anymore. The only thing there might be is a natural object, like say there's a tree or a bush, they'll ask you to heel to that bush maybe or go around it and then down to the blind, but there is no more healing stakes.
Okay, but so by preparing for this, if a guy was gonna, if I was gonna prep her for this test, so there is still a blind, so I can go ahead and still put stakes up and put some kind, I just use a old cloth, a duck blind cloth, and set her behind there so she can't see anything. I don't know if I'm doing that right.
No, we'll cover that in the next part, but that is, yes, there is still a blind.
Okay. Okay, so while prepping her for, if I'm gonna take her to this next level, then just go ahead and, I've been using the stakes. So just eliminate the stakes at this point then?
Yeah, I mean, it's all how you want to train. The thing is, the stakes, a lot of times, the reason we got rid of them is they actually could cover up a bad heel because the dogs would learn to move in and out of the, of the stakes. The actual stakes actually created a funnel to keep the dog closer. So we weren't actually getting a true heel in a lot of situations. And the other situation we ran is, and if you get down to it, is there's no stakes going down to your duck blind, not when you're during hunting season. So, and we don't do it in the UPT and we don't do it in the invitational. So the thought was, let's just make it consistent and just get rid of them altogether.
Right, and like you said, grouse hunting or upland hunting, going back to the pickup, if you're on a road or something, I want her next to me. I don't want her bouncing around on the gravel,
Correct.
So anyway, okay, thank you. I was just curious about that. If I was gonna prep her, I was gonna go ahead and pull the stakes then.
Yeah, I didn't use the stakes a lot till I came close to a test, and then now, like I said, I don't have to use them, so I'm much happier. All right, any other questions as far as healing? We'll kind of keep on going down the line. You guys keep me on track. I'll make sure I don't talk too much about any first item. Okay.
You're doing great, Roy.
All right, so the thing I'll tell you about after this is a sequence. This is what we call the long retrieve sequence: the healing, the steadiness, the remain by, and the retrieve of duck. The thing I'll tell you is you got to know your dog. And I try to, when I first start putting this stuff together and putting it in, I don't teach it as a sequence. I teach them as individual tasks. I teach them to heel. I teach them to stand by the blind while I go off and do whatever I'm going to do. Maybe I'll shoot, whatever, I'll come back. And I do the long retrieve or a steadiness by the blind with the duck retrieve to it. I mean, I break that sequence up. And the reason I break it up is if you teach a dog a sequence and he learns it, he'll try to run it himself a lot of situations. The other thing is if you got a lot of high energy dogs and stuff that really want to go and go and go, a lot of times that's where you can start getting into where they get frustrated and such like this, that they want to go immediately to the end where they get the game. And in that, a lot of situations, I've seen dogs where they actually start to be mouthy, start to voice or, bark when they're being left. And that's a kiss of death on this test. So I try to keep it broken up until a point where I'm getting closer to the test. And then I'll try to run it through at least once or twice. And if I'm good, then I'm not really looking to do it again because it's basically a lot of obedience. Okay. And our dogs are good at obedience, but they don't do well on a steady diet of it. Especially in a situation like that where there is quite a bit of pressure being put on them. So once I get that to the point where they're healing well and stuff, I'll go down, I'll heal them right down. I'll set the blind up. Now, first, I don't usually set a blind up in the actual, well, I guess we should talk about this, not just go right into the test. Okay. So in remain by blind, blinds need to be 3-sided and at least 36 inches high. The blind must create a barrier between the handler and the dog. Okay. Upon arrival at the blind, handlers are allowed to position the dog on either side of the blind, and he may leave a single object, such as a cap, a jacket, or an unattached leash with the dog without incurring a penalty. Anything that they leave cannot be touching the dog. Okay. You can put the dog on either side of the blind or inside the blind on the remain. Okay. You can put them in a sit. You can keep them on a stand. You can put them in a down. Okay. The only thing I'll tell you is that if you're going to put him in any of those situations a down, the commands to put them in the down should not be intimidating. This is not a training exercise. This is a testing exercise. The judges, if you get too rough with the dog trying to make them lay down or whatever like that, the judges will say something. Hold on. My wife just came home. where was, okay, so you can put them either way, just take your time. The only thing I'll tell you on this kind is take your time, set your dog up where you want your dog to be set up. This is not a race. Okay. If it takes a little extra time for you to set them and make sure that they're going to be where you're comfortable leaving them, that's fine. Once your dog is in a down or is down wherever you want him, or sitting or standing or whatever, I would tell you to walk off and get ready. Get your shells ready on your, single action, open up to where you're supposed to shoot. Go to where they're instructed. Put it in, put the shell in, fire it. Don't look back at the dog. It ain't gonna do any good to look back at the dog, okay? Because if you look back at him, they're gonna go, oh, she or she wants me to come to him. So just when you get them set up, walk away. Fire off your shots. There should be some time between your shots. I'd like to see 10 seconds. That isn't always possible because most people are in a hurry but there should be a good pause. That's why we give you single shots so that you can unload and reload and fire off again. If you do it too fast or the judges feel that it wasn't done correctly, they have the right to have you do it again. Okay. So it's in your best interest to take your time when you're training this and do it. If you teach the sequence the way that you're going to run in the test, the dog has something to fall back on. They don't feel anxious. They feel, oh, dad's got it or mom's got it under control. I know exactly what's supposed to happen next. Okay. Once you get your shots, come right back to your dog. At that point, you can reposition your dog. Okay. Some people put them on a leash to bring them back, clip the leash back on and set them back outside. Some people take the collar. Some people don't touch them at all. That's entirely up to however you're going to do. But remember, this is a testing test. It's not a training application. So we don't want to see a person put it on and do, a couple minutes of heel on their dog. You're going to be asked to stop and place your dog. Any other questions on a remain by? Okay. All right. So when I train remain by, I used to go and I used to put my dog in the blind. I used to put him in a down, and then I'd go off and shoot my shots. And then I would come back and I'd reposition and everything like that. I don't know if I've gotten lazy or what, but now when I come up, I bring my dog up and I set them up on the outside of the blind, right where I want them to be when I'm going to send them for that retrieve. And that means even looking out over the water. And I tell my dog, whoa. My dog's been whoa broke. He knows he's supposed to stand through shots. He knows he's not supposed to move until I touch him on his head. That way I don't have to mess around trying to get a hold of him and reposition him and horse him around and everything like that. So I just kind of taken that out of the situation. That's not for everybody. I'm just telling you the way I do it. You got to make that determination works what's best for you. There's a lot of ways to train a dog. It's just what you feel comfortable doing. And when you're in a stress situation, which a test is a stress situation, you need something that you can fall back on and feel that you're confident doing, and your dog will feel that confidence as well and do exactly as you ask. Any questions on that? On the remain bot, go ahead.
Have you seen any particular things in your judging career that maybe you would definitely, I don't know, I want to say like that you would not do, or like things that maybe you see commonly that you don't need to do, or anything of that nature?
It's,
I'm sure you see a ton of stuff. I'm just like,
yeah, I mean, there's always going to be a different way some people do it. You get people that come up and they got, they're like, I've seen them literally screaming in their dog's ear, I'm not quite sure why people do that, is that you need to feel the need to try to scream and intimidate the dog. Just train your dog as you would, and everything will be fine. And if, nobody goes in when they hunt ducks. Go away. When they're hunting ducks, they don't, put their dog in a situation to scream as loud as they can and then go sit in their blind. So why are you doing that when you test? Now you got to do what, obviously you got to do what works for you. And if that's what you feel you need, I'm not going to tell you you can't. But remember, I'm the guy with the scorecard, and I'm going to take it as what I see, and I'm going to write down accordingly. So I would advise probably trying not to do something like that. Don't try to rough your dog up, pound it on its chest to stay, any of that kind of stuff. We all want to be good ambassadors for NAVHDA. And when somebody layman comes along and maybe he's there for his first test and maybe he's thinking about joining the organization, and you're out there pounding the hell out of your dog and screaming the top of your lungs, they may not want to come and join NAVHDA. They might be like, that's a little extreme for me. So that's the only thing I'll tell you is those situations, it's really not needed, and try to not train that way. So anyways, like I said, I put my dog in a position to where I don't really have to touch him anymore. I roll him through the entire thing and go do everything that I need to do. Like I said, I don't look, once I leave the dog down, I don't look back. I go off to my spot, I shoot off the gun, and I come right back to it. I'll sometimes give him in what I feel. Maybe I'll even give him another whoa, look at him. But in general, I don't kind of mess with them too much. Any other questions as far as they're main by? Thing is, you get the dogs that, that are really high amped up and stuff like that. You got to move slow, make slow movements and be smooth, because when you get frantic, your dog will get frantic, and then they'll start wondering what's going on. And those are situations a lot of times where dogs will start to chirp and get worried or break. You set your dog up, okay, and you go off to shoot. If the dog leaves, we look at it as kind of like a 6-foot circle. Your dog stands up, no big deal. Your dog stands, up, turns around once or twice, doesn't really move, no big deal. We're still okay. We start looking when your dog starts getting happy feet and they start moving, that circles, you can see them moving away. You still possibly might be, you might be sitting at a 3, but if your dog leaves the blind, abandons the blind, that is a non-qualifying score, just so you know. Okay. If the dog that abandons the blind cannot prize. That's pretty much just the way it is. Been there, shot my first shot, turned around, looked down, and there he was standing next to me. So it happens. Just calmly, coolly take your dog back, set them back up, finish out the test. You can learn sometimes just as much from your failures as you do from your successes. Okay.
Susan, you had a question?
It's not really a question so much as just information. For me, for training, the one thing that I've noticed with handlers that rattles them more than anything is that they'll train healing with the water always on the dog side, and they don't train healing from both sides. They don't train where they go off and do the shots to the left, or they go off and do the shots to the right. So if their situation is different, that rattles them, which rattles the dog. So you got to train all scenarios, and remaining at the blind. Sometimes the best position is not on the side you would normally set them up on. They won't be able to see the mark. You need to set them up on the other side. So you need to train it so the dog is used to it, so that you're used to it. It doesn't matter what you do. It's all good. You know the routines, but it doesn't matter if things change for you, because it happens and it'll throw you off, and then it throws the dog off. So train all situations is all I can add to that.
That is excellent advice, because every layout is different that you run in a test. And I will go far as to say, you need to train with somebody when they're throwing it with a winger so they can get used to that sound. You need to have hand throwers. You need to have, all those situations, like she's saying, is that, you have to train it, make it hard when you're training. Because then when you test, it's a piece of cake for them. we'll talk about it in the steadiness one, and in the retrieve, I'll talk about some things that I do there. But in the situations like that, I'll shoot off 2 shots. I'll come back, I'll shoot, I'll come back, come back, stand in the blind, look at the dog, give him a command. Then I'll go off maybe and shoot another shot, and I'll come back. All those situations like, a gun jamming, I'll have, stand there and I'll talk to the guy training with me. We'll talk about what we're going to do next while we're standing in the blind. Any of that kind of stuff, it doesn't take any more time to train, but those are all little things that can happen in a test that, if you're comfortable with it, you'll feel comfortable. Your dog will feel comfortable. Your dog will read you better than you could ever imagine. And we see it all the time as judges. So it's quite interesting. It actually makes the day go by when we get to watch some of that kind of stuff. So any other questions? Because that was really good info. Okay. All right. So we're on to steadiness by the blind. Okay. So you've shot your shots. You come on back. Let me read that so I can make sure we're covering the bases.
Roy, I don't know if you can see my screen, but just I've pulled up the Ames and Rules book, and I have the steadiness by blind on the screen. But
I am working off my phone right now, so I got my iPad running over here on this side because I can barely see that.
No, it's no problem. I just want to let you know.
Where are we at here? Okay, so when you come up there and your steadiness is coming up, you walk up to acquire your dog. If you're one of the repositioners, reposition them on the outside. They have to be on the outside of the blind. You have to be on the inside of the blind. Okay, that's just the way it is. Reason that the blind was changed to make sure that it's 3-sided and at least 36 inches tall, because there needs to be separation between the handler and the dog. Okay, if you're right on top of the dog is less likely to make a change to his attitude, as opposed to if he feels that he can separate from you. So that's the idea behind this test. That's why we do it that way, to see how well you're training your dog. Okay, so you'll be positioned on the inside. When you take your time, I can't stress enough. I see so many people that get in so much of a rush, and if you're one of the ones that leaves your dog and say, you coming back, and normally you always come back and you tap them on the shoulder and say, stay again, or whatever you're going to do. And this time you walk up and you decide, he's okay, I just won't do that. I've seen that go wrong at every level. Okay. Take the time and do it exactly how you've trained it. All right. Come up. Once your dog is set, once you feel your dog is set and you are comfortable with that dog is set, you step into the blind, load the shell, and nod your head. That is so much nicer when you do that for the judge, that we know that you're ready. Nod your head, close your gun. We're ready to go. Okay. Distractionary gunner goes off. Then you'll shoot. You need to shoulder the gun. If you do not shoulder the gun, there is a good chance that you might have to redo it again. We will not have people standing there staring at their dog, shooting the gun off from their hip in an intimidating fashion because they think their dog might break. Besides that, it just looks better. Shoulder your gun like you've trained your dog to do this. Okay. Fire. Take your time. They're going to give you time to reload. So you're going to pop if it's a single shot, you're going to pop it out, put your new one in, close your gun, nod your head again. Let them know that you're ready. You're in control of the situation. They're going to fire off the distractionary and they're going to launch that duck. You need to shoot the duck while the duck is in the air. Okay. Don't wait for it to splash and then shoot the gun. Okay. You'll make us much happier, and we'll have to think about less things if you do that. Okay. So dogs, it's in air. You shoot the gun, crack the gun open, lean over, walk around, whatever you need to do, or whatever, and give time for that echo to stop, then send your dog. Okay. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Okay. It's just going to be much better for it if you just slow that whole sequence down. Send your dog for the retrieve. Dog will enter the water, swim to the decoys, pick up the duck, immediately bring it back to hand. Perfect, best retrieve you ever seen in your life. You'll walk out of there like a hero. Okay. So when you do the steadiness, you set your dog up. Okay, kind of the only thing there's some, when the duck is thrown, if the dog breaks on the throw, that's pretty harsh. You're gonna get hit pretty hard on that. If your dog breaks on the shot and you're not able to stop them, you're pretty much gonna usually get dinged a predicate. Okay, it's okay if they're breaking on the shot, it happens. If your dog pretty much is breaking, if you can stop them, do it, great. But if you can't stop them and they hit the water after they broke and given a command, obviously you're going to be adjudged accordingly. I can't tell you what each one of those scores are going to be, because without seeing the situation in front of me while I'm judging, but just those are things you got to keep in your mind when you're testing. It can be a lot of stuff's going on and you're trying to keep in control, but it comes with practice. Okay, practice, training, just like you were testing. Okay.
So going back to, you said if your dog breaks on the shot, are you saying that if your dog breaks on the shot, it might not be like a complete disaster? Might be okay?
No, what it means
gonna
is
get a 3 or
it's still a prizable dog. Okay. You're still going to be in a situation where you will have a prize at the end, say if the last sequence, that event, you won't be taken out for that.
Okay.
All right. What it'll be, hey, most situations, breaking on a shot, you're at a 3, but that's obviously without seeing the situation, because there's a lot of stuff that can go on before and slightly after that can, really kind of impact that. Like if your dog is scooted down twice and his feet are touching the water and he breaks on the shot, yeah, you're going to get hit in a lot of situations. So, saying that also, so if your dog is scooting and you're getting down close and everything like that, you got to make the determination as a handler. Your dog, and if you give a command to rectify the situation, or maybe to be better your dog, you can make that decision. The only thing I'll tell you is that the judges will take that into consideration in their judgment. You understand what I'm saying? It's probably better off giving a command than having it turn into a total just show, okay, for lack of better words.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've heard that, if you need to give a command to reduce further bad behavior, I guess,
Yeah.
give the command, just make it count.
Correct.
Brayden has a question too.
Okay.
So on the retrieve portion,
Okay.
where the deliver to hand,
Mhm.
the dog come, directly to you. You stand still, but reach down, grab the bird, or does the dog, in order to get a 4 on that retrieve, does the dog need to cut and heel and present the bird?
Well, what we mean when we say the dog should present the bird doesn't necessarily mean sitting, leaning the head back, whatever like that. The dog should come to you in a way that is like, we'll get hit as like what we call drive-bys. So the dog comes out of the water and he has no intention of even acknowledging you because he's got his duck or her duck, and they walk kind of past you and you reach down and snatch it right out of their mouth as they're going past, and they let go because they know they're supposed to. That's not a presented delivery. Okay. But again, also a dog that comes up and say they're not sitting, or they just walk and they got their head down, but then the hand comes right to the handler leans over, takes the duck from the dog drops it to his hands with minimal. That dog's presented the game. He's brought the game back in a situation like that. You haven't had to wrestle it out of his mouth. The dog didn't come. Like the only other ones that kind of is it's on the fence and you got to look at it when you judges. You'll get some dogs that'll come up and they'll turn around. I've seen them and sit with their back towards the handler with the duck in their mouth, with basically what we call avoidance of giving the duck. Now, yes, you're going to get, that is going to be taken into consideration on your retrieving score, because that's a dog that's being possessive. That's a cooperation issue. It's, an obedience issue. So all those things, we take into consideration as far as, but I say when we mean presenting the game, it does not mean the dog has to sit and lean back and show the game, whatever. It just means that the dog should bring the game to the handler within, basically an arm's length, or that they can just reach down and take it with minimal fuss from the dog and with no problems there. That may kind of answer the question?
Yeah, that I kind of was just wanting a clarification on presenting the bird.
Yes. In my former life, when I was at another testing organization, we had to sit, all our dogs were not required. They were supposed to, but if they didn't, they got graded. But they should always sit and deliver to hand. And that means basically sitting with their head back and presenting the game. That was it was judged in manner of retrieve. We're not looking for that in NAVHDA. We're looking for an acceptable retrieve to hand. Okay.
Was
Now,
that
UPT,
the German system?
Yeah, that would be the German system, the JGHV. With UPT, now it's within a reasonable distance. So that means if the dog comes out of the water and you got to walk a little bit or a big stretch to get to him, that's fine. Okay. So because the UPT is not as stringent of a retrieving test as the UT. Make sense?
Yep.
Okay, so the difference, you get into UPT, you don't have the decoys. You don't have, like I said, you have to have the blind. The throw is shorter. Okay, it's about half as long as the utility one. Okay. Other than that, it's pretty much, pretty trained the same. You don't have to remain by in the UPT. You just got the steadiness, and the dog can break on the shot and still be not lose a predicate, basically. Any questions as far as that?
I've got a question on the retrieving part of the steadiness, or that portion. I saw a dog at a test recently. It didn't mark the bird very well at all, and it actually went into a duck search, I guess is what you would call it. And it took it a while. It did. Is there any? I mean, it's not really a marked retrieve test, is it?
It is.
Not seen that
I mean,
before.
you're not. It is a marked retrieve, but it's not. You're not getting graded on the marked retrieve. In a situation where, say, the dog looked away and it didn't see the where the bird landed. In general, that takes quite a bit from not to see that. In a lot of situations, you get into that. That's a dog that really just doesn't want to go and do it. They kind of want to go for a duck search because they learn to love that duck search and that freedom. Now, that's not always the case. It might be true that the dog just never saw it. It was a wet duck. It sank. It wasn't bad. As judges, we're looking at that and we're going to give them a reason. It's not a timed event. We're going to give them a reasonable time to be able to say, get down. Because in that grading of it, there is a no score. Okay. They don't always use their no score in that one per se, but in that situation, say the dog, something happened and it just didn't get the mark. The guy set him up on the wrong side, whatever, and he didn't get the mark. The guy sent it. You could see, as judges, we could visibly see the dog was like, I don't know where it's at. Head's moving back and forth quickly, still enters the water and swims straight out because it's kind of supposed to be out there. And all of a sudden I'm watching that dog. All of a sudden I see that, I can kind of see where that wind's on that water, and I'll see them click that head sideways and whoop, bam, they finish the retrieve and it's beautiful. I'm happy. I'm giving that dog props. I'm not gonna take away from that dog. Say the dog launches out and goes on a little bit of a duck search, but he gets downwind, and all of a sudden you see that dog make a visible move and go, okay, yeah, he's got it in his nose. I'm going to look at it. The situation I'll tell you is that, when I look at that type of thing happening, it's happened quite a bit before. I've seen it quite a bit of times before. If I was out duck hunting, how much would that have taken away from my day? Okay. In a microcosm. So, I mean, obviously, so if you think like the whole event's 20 minutes and it takes 5 minutes for that dog to find and locate that duck. If I had like a 20-minute day, 5 minutes would be a quarter of the day. That's quite a bit, isn't it? I might have to take in consideration that dog, what was he doing? Did he really need to do that? Or should he be doing his job, which is he's been trained to do, which is he knows there's a duck out there to go find. And those are the type of things I think about when I got to take stuff into consideration when I'm judging it and which way I feel that the performance is going on the dog. Kind of understand what I'm saying? I know it's kind of talking in, not exactly 20 minutes or.
Yeah, no, that explains it. And that's exactly what that dog had done. It had a tremendous duck search.
Mhm.
And and it did eventually work itself downwind and made a good retrieve and everything went well. But
Mhm.
I was just curious about that. I had not personally seen that before, because
Yeah.
most of all the marks that I'd seen, the dog marked it well. And
Yeah.
I
think, yeah, that's common with a real high powered dog that really likes to duck search and maybe is right on the fringe of cooperation and lots of desire maybe and not as much cooperation, and they go, okay, yeah, I think I want to go on a little duck search because I like it. I've seen that, but then he gets it in his nose. He goes, I smell it. I got to go get it. So, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. We need those kind of dogs in the system. You need those kind of dogs to be bred to, because you need to have some of that, sometimes some of that wild child to put with one that maybe it doesn't have that wild child to try to balance it all out. So those are types of things you got to think about. Training for this. Okay, so when I do it, I never throw just one duck. When I do a couple sequences. So I'll go through the whole sequence, then I'll usually stand back in there, set them up again on just this part of it. When that first duck comes back, what I do is I take the duck from the dog. I throw the duck right down on the ground by the dog, right down there. Okay. And set them back up and do the whole thing, do the whole thing again. If that dog tries to go get that duck, I make a correction, set them back up, send them again. That's my duck. You leave that duck alone. You go out there and get another one. Situation that'll help you is because that landing is going to be full of duck scent. Okay. I don't care what anybody says and how clean they think they're going to get it by not putting the duck down or picking up all the feathers, or that duck scent is on that landing. Okay. And, just prepare for it. Same thing when I do the same thing. Also, I stop, I'll shoot 3 shots. I'll shoot 1 shot and send them, I just keep them guessing. Don't let them feel that they got it understand, oh, he's going to shoot 2 and then I'm going to go, or there's going to be 4 shots and I'm going to go, just change it up on them. Make them keep their mind engaged. These dogs are built to work independently of us. That's the strength of our dogs and pointing dogs in general, but they go away from us and do what they're supposed to do without us being there. Okay. You got to engage their brain when we're training them, because if you don't, and you try to treat them like a retriever where it's, the same mark you put, labs, they're a fantastic hunting dog, and you could put them on a truck and do the same drill their entire life and they'll eat it up. That's just the way they're bred. That's the way their mentality is because they've built to do hundreds of retrieves. Our dogs can do the retrieving, but they're also asking ourselves, they're to change gears, be independent, be cooperative, be obedient, be independent. And you got to keep their brain engaged when you're training. And if you just try to grind them, and there's times to grind, but you can't do it all the time. You'll just end up souring them on it and everything will go sideways on you. Any questions? Same thing like I talked about is like, use those wingers so they get used to that noise. Fire the winger and then, come up and throw another duck. You just break it up with them. Make sure you got decoys in the water. I start them out when I train this whole sequence, or I train the sequence when we're proofing it out. I do it on the land. Okay. I don't, first time I kind of put it all together, I don't do it in the water. I do it on the land. To the point where I put the blind up, I put the decoys in the grass. Okay. And send the dog and do it on the land. Once I feel that I have control and they understand the situation on the land, then I'll transition to the water. As soon as you go to the water, you're in their element. Because if you got to make a correction, then you got to get wet. So, when they're on the land, you could make, say they run out there and they sniff the duck and they walk away. Well, you can enforce your trained retrieve right there on the ground. Okay. So I always proof it all out on the land before I ever go into the water. Once I get in the water and then I'm doing it, once you get this, sequence down, they're doing it well. You don't need to grind it into them because they just end up falling apart. They'll find a way to make it fun for them. And sometimes their fun is not your fun. Any questions? Anything? You guys still there?
We're still here. You're doing a great job. No, this is really great information for sure.
Okay.
I've got a question.
Go ahead.
Could you apply that? Because I don't always have availability to land with the water, but I do have a boat with the dog dock on it that I do lots of drills with her, swimming through the decoys, getting the bird, bringing it back to the dog dock, sitting, presenting the bird. I mean, I know it's not the test. I know it's not on land, but I do a lot of those yard drills like you were saying.
Yeah.
Set up the blind in the yard, set the decoys in the yard, and do all that. But when it comes to, is there anything negative about maybe doing that out of the boat?
I don't see it as a negative because I don't see it as a negative, but it's not something I would only do that and then go to the test. Okay.
No, but I'm just saying,
as far as those, they'll learn that, okay, I got to go get the, once they're in the water, water is water. How they got in the water is big deal.
right.
The
Right.
decoys are in the water. They, oh, hey, them are plastic ducks. I don't want no part of those things. That's fine. All that training is good training, and you're also engaging that dog's brain. You're making him use his brain and think outside the box, and he'll learn his safe zone. His safe zone is get in the water, go out, get that duck, and come back to dad. Whether I'm standing on the dock, whether I'm standing on the shore, whether I'm standing on a pier, it's all good. But it's just something I would tell you that I would not go into a test without at least doing a couple times at least in what the testing sequence would be like on the type of ground that it would be. Not necessarily the ground, but a type of something that would simulate the test.
But there went, okay, that was my question, actually. There's nothing negative about keeping her tuned up and out of the boat.
No.
But also incorporate the mock, so to speak, the mock part of it, right?
I know a guy that used to set up his layout blind, and he put the decoys out, and that's when he was getting ready for season and stuff like that. He'd shoot, he'd have launchers out there throwing, ducks and stuff like that. He'd launch him, he'd sit up, launch him, shoot, and then send, the dog would be sitting next to him, on his layout, blind down there, and he would send the dog would run out there, pick it up, run back. Those are all scenarios the dog will learn to boil it down to what it really needs. It's just like I said,
Right.
you just can't expect you train them one way and then have them jump in something cold turkey and expect a different, oh yeah, no problem. No, they don't have that kind of reasoning, but they're pretty amazing animals. They do a lot of stuff with just simple cues.
So just real quick, just one other thing. You said practice with the winger. What if you don't have the winger? I've got a hand launcher, with the 22 blank, but that gives you the gunfire and the report part of it, right?
Yeah, that's not so much I'm worried about the report is that noise, that the snapping of the bands and stuff like
Right.
that. The only thing I'll tell you is that if you don't have it, there should be somebody who's got one. You got to maybe ask around, maybe make friends with the local Labrador Retriever Club, and come out there and do a couple, just something, that you can understand. Maybe your test, if you're running your test for your chapter and, volunteered to set up that winger. And at the end of the test day, when you go to take it down, you say, hey, can I throw a couple for my dog? Those are all
Right.
type of situations that you could, without having the equipment, you can actually do something with.
What about, and then I'm gonna stop, but what about, I'm gonna ask this question because I haven't been around those wingers very much. I do have bird launchers.
Mhm.
What about the noise of the bird launcher?
That's
Is that
perfectly acceptable.
Huh?
That's perfectly acceptable. I don't actually, a lot of times I don't pack my big winger. I pack my uplender, they call it. It makes somewhat similar sound and it launches a duck pretty good. I use that a lot of times instead of using a winger. It's just that unnatural sound that's not going
Right.
to, so that the dog's not going to go, what the heck was that? And want to go investigate it.
All right, that was my question, because I don't have a winger. I've got the launchers. I could set it at an angle.
There you
and
go.
Put something in there and shoot it out into the water or whatever the scenario may be, but okay.
There you
that
go.
was
You
my-
do that. And then maybe, like I said, you try to just keep your eye out for situations that you might be able to train in.
Yeah, I rejoined a local NAVHDA here, so I'm hoping maybe to get some of that exposure this summer.
There you go.
Okay,
Well,
thank
and
you.
something else I learned this past summer, actually with Roy, was like a regular launcher. And they put regular launchers on a boogie board and cut it in half so that you can float it out or set it in the vegetation, maybe somewhere you can't put a zinger.
Correct. I have a large
And-
inner tube and I have one on a life ring that I can hide in the weeds and stuff that I can use to simulate and to extend dogs on duck searches by launching game farther and farther back into the marsh. So it's a whole training thing that I'm not going to go into tonight. But there's a lot of tools out there that we didn't have when we started out, when I started out this, and it's kind of, if you keep yourself open and look at things and think about them and how you can apply. And sometimes you got to try stuff and sometimes it doesn't work out and sometimes it does work out. And then that's how you kind of build your toolbox to become a better trainer and get better trained dogs. But if you're always willing to learn, you'll always, it makes it enjoyable and you'll get better at it as opposed to just trying to stick one way.
Thank you.
And which one more thing I just wanted to hit on as far as like shooting blanks and whatnot, buying shotgun blanks this day and age, not really cheap, especially
Nope.
like if you have a dog that, that's, they're breaking on the shot and you're shooting a lot of blanks.
Yep.
Something I learned from another person was, a $100 .22 long rifle revolver, and you can go to your hardware store and get 22 caliber Hilti epoxy anchors, or the powder loads.
Correct.
And they're 6-7 cents a round compared to 50 cents for an actual blank.
Yep. You can do that. If you're going to do that, the other thing I would suggest is you go get yourself a PVC pipe. You paint it black, the same size as the barrel. You just kind of slide it over the barrel, as long as it's not one where the gas comes out the end of the barrel, obviously. But buy yourself 24 inches of that, and then you can actually swing that and shoot that just like you would be a gun, so your dog gets used to that being out front too.
Yeah, and I actually 3D printed a 12 and a 20 gauge cartridge shape that offset holds the 22 blank,
Okay.
where I can stick that in my training shotgun and
Yep.
use the same rounds.
Yep, it's all good money saving type tips. Anything else?
Yes, what we've done from, just training time is always at a premium and you never know who's going to show up. Sometimes you'll have a training day where there's 4 people, sometimes 8 or 10. So as we go through this sequence, what we'll do is we'll have another handler and their dog, say 10, 20 feet behind the blind, just posted there, just having the dog at heel, the handler's there, and they just sit there and observe and experience the sequence and watch the other dog.
Correct.
It's just another way. I don't know. You may have covered that. I came in late, so.
No, and that's, it goes back to, kind of like what the old timers used to do, the stakeout, where they used to have stakeout all the dogs and then do steadiness work. It's something you can do as long as the dog's gonna be quiet and sit there, because the thing is, if he's gonna be crazy or it's gonna be crazy, you're not being fair to that person that's trying to train.
Oh, no, the dogs have to be controlled. No.
Correct.
No.
So,
But it's a way to,
when I do remain by, I do remain by in my backyard. I'll set the blind up. I'll get myself a nice seat, maybe an adult beverage, set the dogs up all around the blind, and then sit down in my chair and just sit there, enjoy the day a little bit, and have them sit there. Pretty soon they'll get to relaxing and stuff. You do it enough times and they'll go, okay, we're just going to sit here. Because the more you train and they understand what they're doing, now when you go to correction, you make a correction and that situation isn't causing the bad thing. They're causing the bad thing because they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. So,
well, I think you hit it on the head. The whole thing is to get your dog to the point where they relax and they understand, whether it's steadiness in the field or at the water, it's take a breath, you're not going yet, and you know it. And,
correct.
And that's like breakthrough behavior with these dogs. A little bit. All right.
Anything else? Anything else? I'll answer any question you guys want.
Okay, I don't know if this is a bit premature, if we're done talking about retrieve of duck and study by blind and everything. But I don't know that we've really had anybody go over too terribly much of the judging of physical attributes and
Okay.
What you look at, what you look for, that kind of thing.
Okay. I mean, nobody's added any more questions on this. I can kind of go over it. I'm not a confirmation judge by any. You guys probably do know a lot more about confirmation than possibly I do, but I can tell you what we're looking for when we're doing an examination and kind of what it will help you out in the future going forward. So, as they always tell you, you need to handle your dog as a young puppy and get them used to having their hands, their feet touched and their hands in their mouth and the touching on their body and maybe groups of people all petting them at the same time, all that type of thing. You got to get them used to doing that. In those situations, they're going to be, I bring my dogs to training day and I have other people check them, take a look at them. And if I'm gonna lie to you, if they even think about growling or something like that, the hand of God explains to them why that's not in their best interest. And I'm a firm believer in negative behaviors. Negative aggressive behaviors must be dealt with extremely quickly and judiciously, for lack of better words. Because that's you want to make sure that you're building a dog that's going to be acceptable to your hunting partners, to other people in the field and everything like that. There's no place for aggressive dogs. There's no place for it. So when I come up and I'm checking the dog, I'm watching the dog throughout the day, how the dog acts, how the dog around his handler, everything around other people, to give myself a little bit of insight of what that dog is going to be like when it comes time for me to check that dog's attributes. A lot of times I'll come up to the handler and I'll be like, okay, as the handler, I'm going to ask you to pinch your dogs between your knees, pinch his butt between your knees. That nice little V right in front of their hip muscles is the greatest place for you to put your knees and kind of lock them in position. And you're going to hold just the leash. Okay, dog's on a leash. You're just going to hold the leash. You're not going to grab the collar. You're not going to yank that leash up tight. Think about that. The dog doesn't know me and I'm getting ready to put my hands on this dog. And now you have got the dog cranked way back, trying to hold his head up. Dog's like, oh my God, what the hell is going to happen to me? I got to protect myself. So just stand there and be calm and let the dog be what it's going to be. And when the dog settles down, I'm like reading down and I'm going to, the other judge is going to kind of come back. I'm not going to kneel over. I'm just going to lean down. I'm going to hold my hands out, just kind of open and say, hey, talk to him really nice. Hey buddy, hey girl, how you doing? And give him a little pet. I don't ever dive right into the mouth. I like to pet them a little bit, run my hands on their neck, give them a little scratch behind the ears, look into their eyes. I'm looking in their eyes because they'll tell me what they're going to do if I can look in their eyes. I'm also checking their eyes to make sure that they're not ectrophic or introphic, or if there's anything in there. I'm just, looking at that dog and trying to connect with them that I'm just here to look at you. Now, when I slide my hands, the way I do it is I take the collar and I'll grab my 2 middle fingers on my hand will go underneath the jaw line and it'll kind of loop into that collar. And that's why I just get the hold of that collar. The reason I get a hold of that collar is that if I get in a situation where something's going bad, I can straighten my arm out and I'm protecting my face. Okay. I've been bit before. I don't want to be bit again. Okay. Those situations, like I said, that's kind of where, that first move, that dog can tell you a lot. Okay. So don't just grab them, just kind of ease into them. You wouldn't like it if somebody grabbed a hold of you like that. Then I give them a little scratch again like this. And then what I'll do is I'll slide 2 fingers over the top muzzle and I'll just peel. I peel lips back. I don't try to force their dog's mouth open. I just peel their jaws open. I can see all the teeth down to one side. I can check for if there's, all their 105s and all that stuff. They don't have any extras or any missing of their 100s. I can see if they're on their butt bites on the front, and then I'll just slide around the front. I'll peel the lips up. And I'll look at those front teeth. Okay. And see. When you look at the front teeth on a dog, don't crank his head back. Put his head down level. Because what you're doing when you crank them back is you're exaggerating that situation that might be like a butt bite or something like that, because you're just cranking their head back. You're shortening all that distance. So look at it when it's down. Okay. I never kneel in front of a dog. I work with bent over. If you got a bad back, then don't be a NAVHDA judge, because you don't want to kneel in front of a dog, because when you're down on their level and they say something happens, and dogs move extremely fast, they can get you in a really bad situation. So by keeping leaned over, you can always stand up. You can always stretch your arm out. All that stuff can protect you. But anyways, I go back, I peel that front open. I'm looking at that butt bites, or I'm looking at that front bite to see if it's butt or if it's, if it's undershot or whatever. And then I'll just kind of slide their head aside, and the same thing. I'll peel it back, and you can peel all the way back down to his molars and see his molars without ever having to force his mouth open. Okay. The dog will be much happier that way. He'll be less like, nobody wants to have, their mouth ripped open and held open, trying to look back and see the molars and stuff. And the other thing I'll tell you is that if at all possible, you don't want to cover that dog's eyes. When you're checking them teeth, you don't want to cover that dog's eyes. You just want to put it in there. So like I said, I check and look. And in some situations, those, especially your 100s and 200s, there's, all those, the old guys, we used to call P1s, P2s and stuff like that. Sometimes they're not erupted, especially in a younger dog. Sometimes you just got to take, and a lot of times I'll use my fingers and I'll run my fingers along and count the teeth, because I can feel them as opposed to seeing them. Because sometimes they're just a little bit sticking up through them gums, and, jowls sitting down or tongue comes out and you can't really see. But I just run my fingers along there and just feel them, and I'll count them. You'll see me counting them in my head. And okay, and I'll do it the other side, and it's an easy way to get through the attributes without having to put a lot of pressure and a lot of stress on the dog. Because the longer you go, the more squirrely the dog's going to be, unless the dog's really been handled a lot. Especially if it's a judge running, you're always happy when it's a judge running, because it's going to be super easy to check the teeth, because usually they'll tell you there's something wrong before you even get there. So, any other questions? Then that's the mouth. Okay. So when you're checking coat, like I said, I'm not a confirmation judge, but I got some tricks that kind of help me. When I'm looking at harshness on coat, especially for the wire breeds, and the Pudelpointer falls in there too. What I do is I reach down and I snatch out some hair so I can get some guard hair and some regular hair. And what I do is I spin it between my fingers, kind of like you're just like, trying to rub some glue off your fingers. And I spin it and I watch and see how that thing springs back. Okay. If those guard hairs and everything kind of pop right back into the, strength, they're nice and straight again and stuff, that tells me that's a pretty good harsh coat. If they have a tendency to wrap around and just kind of, you're not looking at as good a harsher coat. You're looking at, a little less. Okay. I find that works well for most all my harsh bred style dogs and stuff like that. The other thing you can look at is when they come out of that water, what do they like? Is that water still just in their hair, or is it just like the dog shook and it was almost like he went underneath a blow dryer because that's a good harsh coat. That means that water is just not penetrating that coat and it's getting out of there. As far as denseness, I don't get stuck looking at the back. The back's always nice, but the thing is what really is you want to check is where the rubber meets the road. That's those front shoulders and that chest and the backs of the legs on the front. When you a lot of times I do is like when they'll stand the dog up, especially if, they're doing a general check or whatever like that, I'll just kind of take my thumbs and try to push that coat apart to see if I can get down to that. How easy is it for me to get down to that skin? A good dense coat will really almost fight you to get down to that skin. And that means, that dense coat's great for when they're running through the cover. That's going to protect them very well. So, those are the type of things I use when I look at coats to check for harshness and dense. And then I grade them from there. And the only way you do that is knowing your breed, knowing other breeds, and just paying attention. It's the end of the day. And I know a lot of judges are like, we just got to make sure that you take the time to look at it and everybody stays attentive to see what's that coat like. Because like I said, the only way is what's going to be going through. We do note in the notes if the dog is a slick, there's no furnishings, that will be noted. It should be noted as no furnishings in the comments. And that's about it. That's attributes pretty much. Obviously I'm not going to go into the other attributes. So the other ones are pretty easy to check. The only one left, but any other questions as far as attributes or anything? Hello?
All right. I did have a question come in about blind whining. And then it looked like Matt, did you have something you wanted to ask?
Yeah, I did. Just a quick, for my personal knowledge, I'm curious, how much do you guys go over with, the apprentice judges and becoming a judge? How much do you guys go over? You mentioned ectropic and entropic. Who presents that to you guys? Y'all have like a vet come in and talk to you about it, or?
We cover it in it's supposed to be covered in Ames and Rules. It's also in the actual Ames and Rules guide. Okay, what ectrophic, entrophic is. It's teaching as you go forward. There are certain breeds that it is not, you got to watch for that maybe aren't, but they have the appearance of, like some of the Spinones and the Braca Italianos. They have an eye that is looser, and it maybe isn't necessarily ectrophic or entrophic, but it's kind of you got to see them because there's so many different examples you can't almost document. It's almost, and it just takes time. That's why the judging, the apprentice program is supposed to take 2 years, and you need to be able to see these dogs and understand it.
So is there any kind of definition in there to where, like, if you do have a loose lid, you can have a loose lid, but if it rolls one way or another, if it rolls in or rolls out, then that is defining.
There should be there's an illustration in the actual Ames and Rules in the back, I believe.
Okay.
For attributes.
Gotcha.
It's been a while since I looked back there, but yeah, it's it's a situation you got to look and take into consideration because it is, especially when you start, I don't run into it as much in the grouse woods, but when you get out to the guys, when you're hunting with where there's grass lawns and stuff, it's a big deal.
Right. Okay, that answers it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there was a question on if you have any tips on how to stop vocalization or whining in the blind.
Okay. I start out with is basically I'll set them in a situation where they're going to be in that, and it's during a training day. And if they do, usually what I'll do is, like I said, I'll have somebody that I'm trying, when I'm like, say on the remain by, that's usually when it happens the most is on the remain by. When I go off, I have my partner, whatever, stand there, and we'll start out with just a no every time it comes up, especially when they're younger. And if you catch it early, a no, a strong no. And then maybe it's a walk over and wrap them with a rattlestick. You guys know what a rattlestick is? It's basically it's a piece of bamboo that's kind of split a couple times. So it doesn't really hurt, but it just makes a nasty noise because it clatters. Wrap them with that and tell them no, and to the point you can progress to a collar and, hit them with the collar. But dogs, the thing is, a lot of it is catching it early. And when you train, if you identify that as, stop trying to do the full sequences and go back to just partial sequences and fix it in the remain when they're not by the water's edge. Because as soon as you start putting the game in and stuff, and now you started correcting them, now your problem you're running into is you're correcting them when there's game around, which is when you'll never really want to be correcting the dog if possible. I haven't run into too many of them. Well, a few of them that were, and they were vocal on other things. Those situations like don't put yourself into situations where the dog is making to be sit for extended amount of time and goofing around. I had a guy that came to me and he was teaching steadiness to his dog by tying the dog to the bumper of the truck with a check cord and then letting Chucker run around in front of it. The dog got very aggravated and frustrated because he couldn't get to the birds that he could see visually. Same type of situations where, things weren't going well in the bank and the dog is, and they're making the dog sit for longer and longer periods of time when there's a duck in the water and you can see the dog just wanting to go because they're talking or doing, in those situations, you gotta figure out what to gain here. You're trying to be slow to train the dog, but you're also, if you don't want to be so slow that you're frustrating the dog. In those situations, it might be best that you set up and send them so that they don't get into a situation where they're going to start to bark. That's that type of a frustration situation. There are sometimes other dogs that just bark whenever they got away with it. Those situations that a collar was probably the best, and a quick, every time a vocalization's made, a quick correction could possibly help. It's a difficult thing to train them out of, I ain't gonna lie to you.
Brayton's got a hand up. Brayton?
So I had a question on the vocalization. It's not on this portion. It is on the duck search. But I kind of wanted to ask you while we were on the topic is, so say, the dog finds a duck during the duck search and it begins a chase. Yep. And the dog, in the middle of a chase is very vocal. Is that gonna
penalize your score?
Yes.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Okay.
If it is, you call me. But no, that's a dog just showing just a tremendous amount of desire to go get the game. Is the duck search is about desire. That's the big thing with this duck search is go out in an element that is foreign to you and do the job that I ask you to do. That takes desire and cooperation. And when they all of a sudden now they pop this game out and they're in a chase mode and they can see it and they can almost get it. No, I don't know any judge that would penalize that. We just kind of laugh about it when it happens. It's not a bad thing. That's not something that would affect your score or should not affect your, put it that way. If your score is down and you think that's that, you need to make sure you go talk to the judge because I'm sure there's another reason, and that judging team needs to explain to you exactly what the reasoning was, that if you did not have the duck search score that you thought that you should have, why. And I will tell you that on anything that you run, you need to know why the score is that you got, regardless whether you kind of know, because maybe it isn't exactly what you think the reason is. And the only way you're going to know that is to understand it and ask the judge, and the judge should tell you, or the judge team will tell you what it is so that you can make corrections in your training. Don't ever leave, if you've got a score that's other than a 4, don't ever leave without getting the question answered. I mean, even if you know what the answer is and you come back and you say, yeah, well, it's because this, and you go, oh, that's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that.
That's a good point that I've never really heard anybody say. I like that.
Anything else?
Any other questions about anything? I was gonna kind of move on and see. Oh, John has a question. Go ahead, John.
I'm sorry, you guys probably already touched on this whole duck search thing. And I thought I heard him say earlier about the launcher. That, did I understand or hear that right? That you actually use that in a duck search training?
No. That's only the long retrieve.
That's just, okay.
Yeah.
So I was just,
I should say that let me back up. And like I said, there's a lot of ways to train. I actually have a large uplander launcher that I have on a inner tube. And when I do duck search training, there's a method of way I use it, but yes, I do use a launcher in duck search training. It's something when I'm starting them out. Once they get to the point where they're understanding the duck search, I generally don't use it. I kind of weed them off of that. But that is kind of, it's a way to present a duck to a dog as they're getting farther and farther away to the point where they think they're the one producing the duck. So they figure out, if I go farther back or farther away, if I continue to expand, I will find game. And it's in a control situation. It's something that we do here when the dog is learning. Then once they master it, we kind of wean them off. We call it a crutch. We take the crutch away. So yes, we do use it in there, but that's the whole methodology of training, not just something that you do randomly.
No, so if I was gonna do that out of my boat and I wanted to use a dead duck, and then I could go plant it, so I'm not leaving a scent trail or anything, like I could motor up, keep her in the kennel, motor up, plant the duck, and then motor a good distance away and then send her. I mean, I know I'm not on land, but the principle's the same, right? She's still going out and making the search.
Yeah, I mean, if that's all you have to do, that's the only way you can do it, then that's what you got to do. The main thing is that what you want to do in a duck search is you want to make them successful. Every time you put them in the water, they need to be successful. And they need to be successful in a situation where they're not engaged or dependent upon you. We used to laugh when we'd always see, I shouldn't say laugh, but we would see dogs that would go out and they'd swim around in circles in front of the handler for 10, 15 minutes. Because the handler during training they'd go on a duck search and then they'd come back and they're like, oh, I didn't put any game out. So then they'd throw the dog a duck on their way back. Well, dogs aren't stupid. Why should I go out there and swim around in the marsh when dad's got the duck? I'll just stay out here and swim around in circles until dad or mom throws me the duck. So the analogy I'll give to you is that coyotes have to make a living catching wild game. So they're going to do the minimum amount of work possible to get the maximum reward. Dogs are no different. It's the same way that when you're setting up a duck search and you're standing on one shore and you just feel, I don't really want to go over there and plant that duck on the other side. I got to get in the boat and everything like that. I'm just going to walk, 100 yards down the shore here and throw the duck in on this side of the shore, and I'm going to send him. How long before you think that dog doesn't figure out that I can just run down the shore and find a duck? And he's going to do that because he doesn't have to put anything out. So the only thing I'll tell you on your training, when you're doing these different things kind of like that, is think about your dog don't institute a situation where your dog learns the easy way out.
Yep. No, I understand. Yeah, because when I first started doing it, when she was a puppy, I'd go over and I'd take a grocery bag or a Walmart bag and a piece of conduit pipe, and I'd stick it in the ground, and then I'd motor away from it pretty good distance, so she had a visual. She
Mhm,
had a mark that I had to send her to,
mhm.
but it wasn't a bird there where the
Mm.
mark was. I'd put the bird someplace else. I'd make her look for it.
Yeah.
And that got her kind of going. And now I don't have, now I've hunted over a bunch and, she's been in the boat, she's been in real life situations, but not this mock test where I've got to send her a long ways.
Mhm.
A lot of the scenarios I put her in is she's in the boat or in the blind, she'll see the mark, she'll see it fall. Not always, she might have to search, but
Mhm.
anyway, I was just wondering if
One
that
thing
would
I'll
make,
tell you, yeah, is you want to make sure that you want to get rid of that crutch of always seeing a mark.
no,
That
I
is-
know.
that
but
is-
that's
that
how-
is the kiss of death on that. So you need to get her off of the
No.
visual marks as much as possible.
Right, that's when she was a puppy. I gave her a mark, so she had a line to mark to, but I don't do that anymore. I can just send her, tell her dead. She knows her job. I haven't had a lot of area to go where I can do this off of land,
Mhm.
but I've got plenty of lakes around here and I've got my boat, so I can get in a small cove and send her all the way across the cove to the other side and, resemble that. But the only difference is I'm not on the shore. So I'm going to have to start finding a place where I can get out of the boat.
Yeah,
You
either
get-
that or you need to park your boat on the shore.
That's what I mean. Get up, pull up on the shore and get out on the bank someplace,
Yep.
but I was just wondering, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't screwing her up, as far as.
Obviously I'm not there to see exact situation, but it doesn't sound like you're screwing her up. It just sounds like you're having to work with what you got. And sometimes that's what you got to do.
Right, and just putting a different twist on it is all. Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you. I appreciate your input there.
No problem. Brayden, you ain't got any more questions? I can't believe you ain't got any more questions.
Any more?
I do, but
Do you have any, I've got a training resources page up right now on the shared screen. Do you have any training books or videos or anything that you've used in your training or anything that you recommend when people are kind of going through this process? Aims and rules, obviously, stuff like that, but is there anything else that you might recommend?
The Green Book is always a great resource. I still have my original copy of the Green Book. It's a really good one. There's some other tomes out there as far as what to use. Some of them are discontinued. I'm not gonna lie to you. There's a good one that I know is discontinued. Probably won't even talk about it because I have it, but I don't. You can't get it anymore. There's the thing I'll tell you is that probably the best way to learn is to go to the training days, and especially say if you're a new chapter and say you don't have as much resources in that, as if you can find a local chapter or another chapter to go to and maybe make a call and see if you can maybe attend a training day.
Yeah.
And make a weekend out of it if you can, get a bunch of people go together maybe and see. We've had people come up and to our training days. We've also had them call and, hey, can I come up on this coming Saturday and can we do some duck searching? And I'll tell them, it's like, yeah, well, we don't have any water, or yeah, sure, we can do duck search day that day. Most people I found in NAVHDA are pretty helpful. Sometimes you just got to ask, and it's getting past that uncomfortableness of asking for help. Because nobody wants to look like they don't know what they're doing or something like that, or everybody's nervous that somebody will say no. But, sometimes you just got to, buck up and say, hey, I really want to learn, and make a phone call, talk to somebody. I found that, books are great. Videos are fine. but remember that they're always talking about a perfect situation, not a situation that you have at hand. So that to me is why it's more important for me to be face to face with somebody and looking at a scenario and talking through something as opposed to reading a book or a video. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot to be learned on those, but sometimes those situations you need to have that personal interaction with somebody, and that's what NAVHDA brings, because they're here to train you to train your dog, not train your dog for you.
All right, yeah, I agree. Brayton, you had your hand up. See, he's got more questions, Roy.
Okay.
Well, you pulled one of them out of me, but so now we're at the end. This is a field steadiness question
All right.
that I'm curious about. So I've kind of heard from various different judges kind of an all across the board means of judging steadiness in the field, that basically, you know, each bird contact or the 4 or the 5, whatever, is an individual score, and you know they take the average. So say if you had to make on your first bird, dog broke on the shot, you woed it, the dog stopped.
Mm-hmm.
Then on the second one, dog did what it was supposed to. Third one supposed to. On the 4th or 5th one, the dog broke it some portion, and you woed it, and it stopped and listened to you. Kind of what's a judge's perspective on that scenario?
All right, so you're really going to stick me on this one here because I can't say anything. I'm just going to run over what you're telling me. So this is like, don't make Mark Whalen call me and on this one. So I'm looking at you said the first one, the dog was steady, broke on the shot. Okay, broke on the shot or broke on the wing? Broke on the shot.
Broke on the shot.
Broke on the shot. You hollered, "Whoa!" Dog stopped. Okay. So I got an infraction on the dog, but he finished strong. So maybe I'm a 3 overall on that point, or on that particular bird sequence. Now you're saying that he did 3 in a row. She did 3 in a row. Boom, boom, boom. Perfect. Steadied wing shot, fall, retrieved to hand, looked like $1 million. So I'm sitting 4-4. So I'm trending up. Okay, the last one, this dog has decided to give us something to think about. So the dog goes in. Now you're saying that the dog broke again on the shot and you were able to stop it again.
Or
okay.
let's say just for scenario sakes, let's say the wheels start falling off the wagon and the dog breaks on the flush.
Okay.
And you woe the dog, shoot, and the dog listens and obeys the whoa command.
Okay. All right. So I'm looking at this situation here. So I'm trending up, and then I let the dog kind of went down. Okay. So the dog broke, but then he'd actually listened. So the dog kind of bought himself back some points because he ignored and he had an infraction, but he actually listened again. So his obedience is pretty strong, right? Obedience is pretty strong. His cooperation is pretty good because that per dog has actually worked hard and actually put game in the bag. So I got 1, 2, 3, got 5 birds in the bag with minimal problems and stuff like that. So I'm looking at an overall scenario of it. I got probably 1 3 at the beginning and a 3 at the end with a whole lot of 4s in the middle work. Now, I'm also going to look at there's situations that might have arose in there, like maybe a wild flush. Now, we don't shoot wild flushes, but maybe the dog steadied to it. Okay. So all of that has to be taken in consideration of what the dog's overall score is. But I'm looking at this, I'm looking at a pretty good amount of work, a lot of work where it was perfect, and a few infractions that the dog actually listened pretty good. I mean, stopped in mid chase. So if I was sitting in that situation, I probably would stay. I'd come up and I'd be like, I'm at a 4 on my steadiness score. I'm at a 3, depending. Like I said, it's hard because I can't really see. I need to see what's doing. I'm not a good visual. I'm a visual learner, not whatever. But I'd have to say that I would be between a 3 and a 4. I definitely wouldn't be taking that dog out of a prize 1 classification for that, because that's pretty good. That's pretty good work. You know, you got a dog that ran for you, ran out there, pointed the birds, stood through everything most of the time, had a couple where he got happy feet and then had to have it, tried to get it, and then you yelled and it stopped and then went, oh, sorry, boss. And then you finished out the retrieve again after you walked up and tapped it on its head. That's pretty good work, Braden. That's pretty good work. But like I said, if you're using that against me to try to talk about some utility score, I'll deny that I ever said that to you.
Well, it's a good thing this is recorded. Well, no, I really appreciate it. And, you know, I get there's a lot more to it than just the black and white scenario. But I kind of wanted a judge's perspective on a simulated situation.
What I will say is this: there's no such thing as a perfect score. There's a max score. Okay. And in those situations, even a 204 might not be everything 4 on that sheet. There might be some 3s in there that worked out to a 4 because of the strengths of other situations. Because we're looking for the overall picture of that dog, not the individual pictures of that dog. We're not looking for how it did in the field that day. We're not looking for, isn't it an awesome duck searcher? We're looking for an overall rounded, versatile dog. And in those situations, like I said, they may not all be 4s. And there is some subjectiveness because there's 3 judges out there. And each one of those judges, yes, we're all trained the same, but we all have our own thing. And they're never going to be always, I mean, generally everything, but it's never going to be perfectly exactly right because we're not clones. And that's not the way this works. And it shouldn't work that way because it's dogs. And, I know you're an engineer and I'm an engineer. In our world, 1 + 1 is always 2. In dogs, 1 + 1 isn't always 2. It can be 5 or it can be 0, it can be anything.
And that's been the hardest thing for me to kind of, get my head wrapped around into learning how to train a dog is because there's no formula to get to the end result.
Correct. That kind of, like I said, there's a lot of objectivity in actually scoring, but there isn't a lot of objectivity. You'd be surprised to find how we're always pretty close, almost the same number almost every time, not within a number of each other. And that's when we have the discussions out there. And certain judges, I mean, it could be just as quick as you look down to write something down and you miss something as a judge because it happens so fast out there. And that's why there's 3 of us, and that's why we have to talk, and you have to leave your egos at the door, and that's why we talk through all these situations.
Well, I appreciate the explanation.
Okay.
Anybody else have any questions about any part of the test? This is the last utility roundtable we're gonna have. We are talking about doing something like this kind of on an annual or every other couple of years basis. But yeah, I mean, if you've got questions, now's the time to ask them. All right. Well, any parting thoughts, Roy?
What's that?
I said,
no,
do you have
yeah,
any parting thoughts?
Well, the main thing, the only way I can tell you is that you're going to get better at training dogs is training dogs. And the only way you're going to get better at learning and figuring them out is by seeing situations. In training, don't ever worry about a dog making a mistake. If your dog's doing it perfect, you're not training. You're just going through the motions. If you're not getting a correction, you're not training. So make those situations get harder. Make that dog think more. Do the little things that make that dog, kind of bulletproof. So to try maybe to get that correction, because the more corrections you get, the more training you get, the better off your dog's going to be, and the more you're going to learn. That's all I tell you.
Makes sense. Well,
thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for your time. If nobody else has questions,
I don't
Oh.
have a question. I just wanted to say thanks.
Yeah.
My first time sitting in on roundtable and yeah, that was awesome. So thank
Great.
you.
Glad you enjoyed it. Matt, did you?
I just wanted to say thank you also, Roy. I appreciate you coming on and I did learn a tremendous amount tonight. I thought this would be kind of the least interesting of the topics that we discussed, and it was actually for me the most. So thank you very much for coming on and speaking to us tonight.
No problem.
Amanda?
Thanks, Roy. We really
No
appreciate
problem.
it.
Thank you. No problem. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I will say thank you as well. Thank you for your time. This was very interesting and very educational. And we really appreciate you taking the time to, chat with us about this.
Sounds good.
All right.
All right, guys, have a good night.
Yeah, everybody have a good night. You all take care.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.